Good morning, everyone. This is Jeremy here at ExtremeWeatherTracker.com, updating your tropical weather at 11:30 a.m. on September the 7th, 2011. We're just 3 days away from the peak of the hurricane season, and you can see by the tropical Atlantic wide view here that the Atlantic basin remains very active. We have Hurricane Katia located here just to the southwest of Bermuda. We have newly named Tropical Storm Maria located here in the central Atlantic, and we also have an area of disturbed weather located here in the Bay of Campeche along an old frontal boundary and the remnants of Lee that has a 60% chance of developing into a tropical cyclone over the next 48 hours. Now let's start with Katia. Katia is located here just to the southwest of Bermuda. Bermuda is in this area here, and you can see a lot of dry air is getting entrained into the circulation of Katia. You don't see really an eye-like feature anymore. It's basically filled in. She has been downgraded to a tropical status, Category 1 rather, hurricane with sustained winds of 85 miles per hour with some higher gusts. Should bring Bermuda some gusty winds and possibly some large swells and rip currents, and also along the eastern seaboard we could possibly see some rip currents and some large swells as well, but her impacts should be minimal as she basically splits the difference between Bermuda and the United States, making that north turn and then northeastward turn. Now if we go into the model tracks for Katia, we can see the models are in very good agreement now, bringing her to the north and then bringing her to the northeast before getting caught up in the westerlies and becoming extra tropical out here in these cooler waters in the northern Atlantic. So Katia, no threat to land whatsoever other than the rough seas and the rip currents. You can see the models are in very good agreement. She's currently moving to the north-northwest, but should make that northerly turn and then to the northeast and become extra tropical in a few days. So good news for the United States and for Bermuda. Katia will be no threat. Now if we go back to the tropical Atlantic wide view, we see on the wide view here, this is newly named Tropical Storm Maria located here in the central Atlantic. Not looking very impressive, moving off to the west-northwest at a very fast pace of about 23 miles per hour. Now if we go check out Maria's floater, you can see the north side is looking fairly impressive. There's a pretty good band on this northern side, but the south side is pretty much devoid of any convection, although you can see there's a pretty good cyclonic turning here, and latest ASCAT passes does indicate that she has some strong winds associated with her, and the first advisory I believe is around 50 miles per hour tropical storm. Should continue to move on off to the west-northwest, possibly becoming a hurricane before reaching the Leeward Islands. Now if we look at Maria's models here, you see initiated at this point, and there's a pretty good model spread in this of this storm, and you can basically see the NHC track bringing her in this area here. I believe the European model, which is not depicted on this graph, keeps her in a more southerly route. But most of the models do agree that she will be around somewhere around the Leeward Islands here, the northern Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico, coming up in about 3 or 4 days. So these guys here, if you live here in the northern Antilles here, the Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, you need to be preparing. You could possibly be experiencing hurricane conditions, as I do believe Maria will make hurricane status before reaching this point here. Something we'll have to watch very closely. So any of you guys that's located here in the northern part of the Leeward Islands here and Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, these guys here, you will be affected first by Maria as she moves on off to the west-northwest. Thereafter, the model spreads have differed quite a bit. The European seems to want to keep Maria on a more southerly track into the Caribbean, while the GFS is the northern has a more northerly solution, and some of the models are affecting the Bahamas. Some of the models want to recurve Maria before reaching the Bahamas and affect Bermuda. At this point, it's still anyone's game, and I don't want to speculate on where I believe that Maria will eventually end up. For now, the northern Leeward Islands here in Puerto Rico is the first to be affected, so that's what we'll focus on at the outset here, with the eventual track will work itself out at a later time. Now let's go and check out the system in the Bay of Campeche. This is very disorganized. This is the remnants of an old frontal boundary that pushed off the coast following Lee here this past weekend. And you can see there's a lot of dry air in this area to the north of this area of disturbed weather. And there's a bit of cyclonic turning in here. It's hard to pick out. Somewhere in this area there is some cyclonic turning. And there's a lot of convection associated with this, but you can see the amount of dry air in this area is just amazing. The hurricane hunters are supposed to fly into this today. I don't really expect them to find a closed low, a center of circulation in here, but it is possible. And if we go out to the models, you can see that the steering currents in the southern Gulf of Mexico and the Bay of Campeche remain weak. The models are initiated from this area here, but you can see the BAMS models want to bring this out and take it into Mexico, but the more dynamic models actually bring it to the north and then kind of wander it around in here. A couple of the models, I believe, have had it making landfall somewhere to the east of Louisiana, and then you can see some of the GFS ensemble members here, these light gray ones, actually bring it up into Louisiana and then eastward toward Mississippi. So the track is definitely not set in stone on this by any means. The steering currents will remain weak, and until we actually get a center of circulation here, something that the models can latch onto and be initiated from, it's going to be hard for them to understand where this the eventual track could be. So this is something that we're going to have to be watching over the next several days. I don't expect a very powerful system in here, maybe a strong moderate tropical storm, because of the dry air that's being pushed into the Gulf off of Texas. As we all know, Texas is very dry. And I don't see this getting into Texas. I believe the high pressure system that's located here will keep anything from moving into Texas. I believe this is probably the central or eastern Gulf Coast game here, if indeed this does develop and decides to move northward instead of looping around and heading back into Mexico. So this is something we'll have to be watching over the next couple of days. This is an evolving system and something that we'll be keeping an eye on. As you can see, all of this dry air coming in should hinder or at least slow development to a point. So this is something we'll be watching. We'll be watching Katia as she moves on out to sea, Maria as she starts to affect the Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico here over the next several days, and we'll also be watching our Bay of Campeche system to see if we can possibly get Tropical Storm Nate in the near future. That will be the next named storm. So this is Jeremy at ExtremeWeatherTracker.com. I'll keep updating. You keep checking back. I'll see you guys all again soon.